Have you ever had one of those nights where you just stare at the ceiling? You toss, you turn, you count sheep, but sleep just refuses to come?
Oh, absolutely. The kind of insomnia where your brain decides 3 o'clock a.m. is the perfect time to overanalyze everything. It's frustrating.
It is, but usually my sleepless nights just result in me being cranky the next morning. They don't typically alter the course of history or save an entire nation from genocide.
That is a fair distinction. But in the story we are looking at today, the dramatic conclusion of the Book of Esther, a single case of royal insomnia is essentially the hinge upon which the entire plot swings. It is the butterfly effect in action.
It really is incredible. We are looking at the finale today, chapters 6 through 10, and the pacing here is breathless. We go from impending doom to absolute victory in what feels like a heartbeat. But it all starts with that sleepless King Ahasuerus.
Right. Because he can't sleep, he calls for the royal chronicles to be read to him. It's essentially the ancient equivalent of listening to a boring audiobook to nod off. But in doing so, he is reminded of an old event. Mordecai, the Jewish official, had uncovered an assassination plot against the king, but was never rewarded.
And talk about timing. Just as the king realizes, hey, I never thanked this guy, who walks into the courtyard?
Haman, the antagonist of our story. And this is where the narrative irony becomes almost delicious. Haman is walking in specifically to ask permission to hang Mordecai on a 50-cubit-high gallows he just built. He is literally moments away from executing his enemy.
The tension there is palpable. You have the king thinking about honoring Mordecai, and Haman thinking about killing him. And then the king asks that vague question, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor?
And this is a masterclass in psychological profiling. Haman is so consumed by narcissism that he cannot conceive of the king honoring anyone but him. So, he doesn't hold back. He says, "Give this man the royal robes, the king's own horse, the crown, and parade him through the city." He is describing a coronation for himself.
The look on his face must have been priceless when the king said, great idea. Go do exactly that for Mordecai.
It is the ultimate humiliation. Haman has to act as the herald for his mortal enemy. He has to shout Mordecai's praises in the city square. It's not just a defeat. It is a complete inversion of status. The text notes that afterward, Mordecai goes back to work, but Haman rushes home, mourning, with his head covered.
Even his wife and advisors see the writing on the wall, don't they? They tell him, if Mordecai is Jewish, you aren't going to win this, you're going to fall.
Exactly. It's a moment of foreshadowing. They recognize a power at play here that is bigger than politics. And before Haman can even process this humiliation, he is whisked away to the second banquet with Queen Esther.
This is the showdown. Esther has been playing a very dangerous long game. She's kept her identity secret. She's navigated the king's temper. And now, finally, she drops the mask.
She does. And notice how she frames it. She doesn't just complain about Haman. She appeals to the king's sense of loss. She says, "We are sold to be destroyed." She implies that this destruction damages the king's interests. It's a brilliant rhetorical move.
And when the king asks who is responsible, she points the finger right across the table. The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman.
The atmosphere in that room must have been suffocating. The king storms out into the garden to process his rage. And here we see Haman's cowardice. The man who plotted genocide is now clawing at Esther's couch, begging for his life.
Which, ironically, just makes things worse. The king walks back in, sees Haman falling on the queen, and interprets it as an assault.
That's the final nail in the coffin. It's tragic, in a literary sense. Haman is executed on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. It is poetic justice in its purest form. The punishment fits the crime so perfectly that it feels designed.
So the villain is dead. You would think the credits roll there, but we still have a major problem, right? The decree to kill the Jews is still active.
That is the complication in Chapter 8. In the Persian legal system, a decree sealed with the king's ring is immutable. It cannot be reversed, not even by the king himself. Haman is gone, but his machinery of death is still ticking down to the 13th of Adar.
That is a terrifying bureaucratic nightmare. Sorry, I can't stop the genocide because of a technicality. So how do they solve this?
They fight law with law. Since they can't revoke the order to kill the Jews, Mordecai, who has now taken Haman's position, issues a new decree. This one grants the Jews the right to assemble, defend themselves, and destroy anyone who attacks them.
It's essentially a state-sanctioned counterstrike.
Precisely. And the psychological impact is immediate. The text says the couriers raced out on royal horses to spread the news. Suddenly, the Jews go from a posture of mourning to one of power. In Susa, there's shouting and gladness. And interestingly, many locals start pretending to be Jews because the fear of the Jews had fallen on them.
That is a massive shift. A few days ago, being Jewish was a death sentence. Now people are trying to join the winning team.
It shows how quickly political tides turn when the source of power shifts. Mordecai leaves the palace in blue and white royal robes and a gold crown. He is the visual representation of this new security.
Then comes the day of the decree. Chapter 9 describes the conflict. It wasn't a passive event, it was a war.
It was. And the text is very specific about the outcome. The Jews struck down their enemies, 75,000 in the provinces, and hundreds in the capital. But there is a phrase repeated 3 times that is crucial for understanding the ethics here. But they did not lay their hand on the plunder.
Why is that detail so important?
It distinguishes this from a raid or an act of greed. Haman had offered to pay the king with the plunder of the Jews. By refusing to touch the spoils, the Jews demonstrated that this was purely about survival and justice, not enrichment. They were erasing a threat, not robbing their neighbors.
That's a powerful moral distinction. It legitimizes their defense.
It does. And this victory leads to the establishment of the festival of Purim. This is the why behind the whole book. Mordecai and Esther codify this event. They mandate that these days should be remembered forever. Days of feasting, gladness, and sending gifts to the poor.
I love the transition there. It goes from a war story to a holiday of generosity. It's not just we won, it's we survived, so let's take care of each other.
Exactly. It turns a trauma into a celebration of continuity. The name Purim comes from Pur, the lot Haman cast to determine the day of their death. They took the symbol of their destruction and turned it into the name of their deliverance. It's an act of reclaiming their history.
And speaking of history, the book closes in chapter 10 with a focus on legacy. Mordecai is essentially the prime minister now.
Yes, he is second only to King Ahasuerus. The final description of him is striking. He was great among the Jews, accepted by the multitude of his brothers, seeking the good of his people, and speaking peace to all his descendants.
That is the definition of a statesman. He didn't use power for revenge or self-aggrandizement. He used it for the public good.
It contrasts so sharply with Haman. Haman wanted power for his own glory and was willing to kill for it. Mordecai accepted power to save his people and used it to speak peace. It's a profound lesson on leadership.
It really makes you think about the fragility of these moments. If the king sleeps through the night, if Esther stays silent, if Mordecai bows down, the whole world looks different.
It does. It reminds us that history isn't just a series of inevitable events. It's shaped by individual choices, by courage in high-pressure moments, and sometimes by the strange, ironic twists of fate that turn gallows into justice.
A story of reversal, indeed, from sackcloth to royal robes, from a death decree to a national holiday. It's a lot to digest, but it leaves you with a sense of hope, doesn't it? That even when the law is signed and the date is set, the final chapter hasn't been written yet.
That is the enduring power of this narrative. It suggests that behind the scenes, behind the politics and the decrees, there is a justice that can turn everything upside down when you least expect it.
Well, that is a perfect place to leave it, a reminder to stay hopeful, and perhaps to pay attention to those sleepless nights. You never know what they might lead to. Thanks for diving into this with me.
My pleasure. It is a story worth retelling.
Absolutely. To our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey through ancient Persia. We'll catch you next time.
If you have been blessed by this, please like, subscribe, and share this joy with others. God bless.